single-shot .52 caliber, but the man had said it had a lot more range than a Henry. Where you're heading, out onto the grassland of Nebraska Territory, a Sharps might be more what you need. A Henry allows you to fire fast, and it's good and accurate for about 200 yards. But a Sharps is accurate for 1,000 yards. Jerry talked to Jeff about it that night, and the following morning he rode back into town to buy the Sharps. A small stand of bushes waited a few yards away, so he touched the heels of his boots to his horse and rode on over. He swung out of the saddle and left the horse hitched to a strong-looking branch. Plenty of green springtime grass for the horse to feast on while Jerry went after that buck. The wind was blowing toward Jerry, which meant the buck couldn't catch his scent. Also, meant the animal might not hear the metallic click as Jerry cocked his rifle. But he had to be careful, he knew. Even though the deer couldn't catch his scent, it could still maybe hear him if he wasn't careful. He got down on all fours, with the rifle in one hand, and he began to crawl slowly toward the deer. He glanced back at his horse, and the animal was looking at him like he thought he was crazy. That was because the poor horse would never understand the taste of deer meat, Jerry figured, and the horse was surely missing out. Jerry couldn't imagine grass or oats worth crawling on your hands and knees for. The grass under his hands and knees was wet in places. The sun had risen only 3 hours before and not yet burned off all of the dampness of the night before. Even though it was still spring and the nights a little chilly, the morning sun felt warm on his back. Crawling on your hands and knees was a slow way to travel, but the buck didn't look like he was in much of a hurry. These last few months in Tennessee and Missouri had given Jerry some experience hunting, and he had learned that patience was the greatest virtue. He placed a hand down on a damp patch of grass. A small stick was there, maybe blown in the wind or washed over from some bushes during the last rain. The stick was damp, but it made a small snapping sound anyway, under the weight of Jerry's hand. The buck lifted its head and looked in Jerry's direction. Jerry froze in position, not batting an eye. A deer's eyesight was limited, but it would be able to see motion, so Jerry held still. After a few moments, the buck went back to grazing, and Jerry resumed crawling his way forward. When he was about 500 feet away, he stopped moving. He waited a moment, then sat up. The deer continued grazing. Jerry figured he was close enough now to easily make the shot. Growing up in New York, he had never fired a rifle, but he had gotten fairly good at it in recent months. He brought the rifle stock to his shoulder and then sighted it on the deer. And then he slowly cocked the hammer. Even slowly, there was a little click of metal on metal, and the buck looked up. But the buck was in Jerry's sights, and Jerry aimed at a place just behind the shoulder and squeezed the trigger. And yet, something caught the buck's attention, and the animal turned and took a quick step as Jerry squeezed the trigger. The Sharps recoiled against his shoulder, and a cloud of gun smoke whirled about him for a moment. Black powder produced a lot of smoke, and then the breeze dissipated the smoke, and Jerry could see the buck sprinting off over the crest of the low, grassy hill, and he was gone. Jerry set the rifle down in the grass and cursed his luck. What could have possibly gotten the buck's attention and caused him to turn at the last second? Then he saw it. Movement. At least one low rising hill away. Possibly 2 hills. He was still learning to gauge distance out here. He rose up onto one knee and focused his gaze on the motion. They were tiny in the distance, but he could tell they weren't deer. They were horses. More accurately, they were riders. Maybe 6 of them. Among the settlers, there was a spyglass. It belonged to Ezra Winkle, and in the 2 weeks since they had crossed the Missouri River, both Jeff Boon and Abe Hackett had taken turns borrowing it. Jerry wished he had the spyglass now. He would like to have seen close up who those riders were. One thing he was sure of. They weren't from the wagon train. Jerry held still. He didn't want to draw their attention. It was bad enough.